So, I'm going to probably say a couple things to limit the audience for this video right out of the gate. The first is it's going to be a political video. And the second is I have no idea how long I'm going to be talking here. And if that doesn't cause you to move on, a couple other things will, because I tend to talk about Donald Trump. I want to talk about election fraud. And I want to present this in the context not of conservative or liberal or I hate Trump or I love Trump or anything like that. I want to present this information in the context for all of us right now to challenge ourselves to wake up and start thinking, because we've been fed propaganda for a long period of time, and that is exposing itself in the attitudes which shape our belief system and our conduct, and these are attitudes very often that aren't supported by the real world and what's going on in it. So I want to use Donald Trump as an example. I don't care if you love him or hate him. I don't care if you vote for him. I'm not trying to persuade you, but I am asking you to consider what I'm going to lay out as kind of a template for all of us to challenge us as to what's really going on here, and then doing our homework and making more informed decisions. I did a screenshot. Well, let me start out with an assertion, and this is my assertion. Donald Trump was the first outsider president who was not controlled by the ruling elites, if you will, of the world. And this had little to do with American Constitution or anything else. But in my judgment, he was the first outsider outside of that group of elites in their control to get elected president since John F. Kennedy. And they murdered Kennedy. There's plenty of evidence to support that contention now. And so I want to talk about what's going on here. And I want to do it in the context of the 2020 election. And honestly, I don't care if you voted for Biden or Trump or love or hate either one of them, but I want to look at evidence and challenge all of us to consider what's really going on. If we don't learn to think and challenge what we're being fed and challenge our own worldview and status quo, we're going to lose it all. And it's going to happen fairly quickly. I don't think that we're going to get to the next election without some serious challenges, if we even get to the next election. The night of the 2020 election, I took a screenshot showing the percentage of the vote count in 5 of 6 swing states that were fairly important. The only one that wasn't on this screenshot was Arizona. But this was after the polls closed, and it looked like Trump was going to win. And then everything kind of got shut down and went into a turmoil, and a lot of shenanigans started happening. So I want to just quickly read what the screenshot showed. Pennsylvania, and this was after the polls closed. I think I took this shot about 10 o'clock at night Central Time. Pennsylvania, Donald Trump was in the lead 57% to 41.8%. Georgia, Trump had 53.1%. Biden had 45.6%. Michigan, Trump 54%, Joe Biden 44.4%. North Carolina, Trump 50.1%, Biden 48.7%. And Wisconsin, Trump was at 51.7% and Biden at 46.8%. Arizona was another state I wanted to look at, but that didn't happen to show up in my screenshot. So here's a question for any rational person. This was after the polls closed, but the entire vote count hadn't been done yet. And a lot of things happened right after I took this screenshot, or maybe it was right before, and that's what prompted me to take the screenshot. But some polls stopped counting, they said. One, I think, had a water main break, they said. Others boarded up their windows and wouldn't let anybody in to observe their counting. And when the dust settled from all this, like the next day, Biden had come from behind and won all 6 of these states. My question for any rational person on the planet is, what are the odds? What are the odds? Recently, there was a report that came out, and I think the Trump supporters and so forth that are still challenging this are going to make another effort at the to get the Supreme Court to look at this, because they've compiled evidence now, and it's not all Trump people providing this evidence. It's coming from a lot of different sources. And I have a 32-page report from 6 states detailing exactly what was going on and what was wrong with these elections. I'm not going to read all 32 pages, but I'm going to hit a couple highlights. And if anybody wants to look at the whole report, it's posted on my website at trueheart.net, truhart.net. Click on the link that says election fraud, and it'll be one of the links there. But here's some highlights. Arizona was called for Biden ultimately by a margin of 10,457 votes. Maricopa County accepted 20,500 mail-in ballots after Election Day 2020, which was illegal. They should not have been counted. By law, ballots must be received no later than 7 p.m. on Election Day, which was November 3rd. An initial analysis of 380,976 ballots using official state records and official signature verification training techniques identified 181,378 ballots that should not have been counted. Okay. We can move on. It's going to take a little while, but I want to, because this is all stuff that's evidence now. This isn't just conjecture. Maricopa County, Arizona, had no documented chain of custody for 740,000 ballots from the 2020 election. In other words, they can't prove where they came from or how they were managed, and protected prior to being counted. They should not have been included. Out of the 923,000 early vote ballots accepted at vote centers or drop boxes, only 183,406 ballots are accounted for on the ballot transport forms. More than 80% of the ballot transport forms have no ballot counts. So when they're transporting these ballots, somebody has to account for them and sign off and say, this is how many ballots were here. That didn't happen for the vast majority. Only 183,406 were accounted for as they were transported out of 923,000 early vote ballots. Without proper documentation of how many votes were cast at the time they were cast, it is impossible to verify the origin and true total of ballots in a given election. Okay. Next point. Millions, this is Arizona yet, millions of files of the 2020 general election data and security logs were deleted from the election management server and purged on critical days, including the day before the Arizona audit of the 2020 election began on February 2nd, 2021. So the day before they started auditing to see to account for all these ballots, they deleted the records. That's a matter of record. Okay. Significant anomalies were discovered for mail-in ballots returns in Pima County. In precincts with these anomalies, had over 92% return in Pima County, and apparently 92% of mail-in ballots doesn't happen, but that's beside the point. What did happen as they continued to count these so-called mail-in ballots, and as the counting progressed, the percentage of Republicans that flipped and voted for Biden on these ballots went from about 6% up to about 40% as the count progressed of Republicans voting for Biden. Maricopa counties, Pima and Maricopa counties in the 2020 general election. Let me start that over. A computer scientist testified that an algorithm similar to what is used in cruise control or self-driving cars was present, affecting the early votes in Pima and Maricopa counties in the 2020 election. So somebody had installed some kind of algorithm into the computers with the ability to reach and maintain a predetermined set point outcome despite unplanned disturbances. So you can interpret that any way you want, but what it means is these computers determined the ratio of votes regardless of what was input from the actual vote. It was a done deal before they ever submitted any votes on some of these machines. Let's move on to Georgia, and I may not go through all 6 of these. Georgia was called for Biden by 11,779 votes. Fulton County, Georgia was the most populous county in the state, and it has no digital record of all in-person votes cast in its original results. How does that happen? Not a single ballot purportedly cast during the early in-person voting was witnessed to and signed off by poll managers as required by Georgia election rules. Seals were broken, memory cards removed from the tabulators for the results of these 315,000 votes, which were printed out on different machines than the ones that tabulated them. This prevented the reconciliation of how many votes were cast on each machine. Here's another one. We're in Georgia now. Thousands of fraudulent presidential-only ballots were injected into the second machine count. So as they're recounting these and building up the count apparently for Biden, they inserted thousands of ballots that only had one candidate and one office on it, and that was the presidential choice. So these were injected into the machines with huge margins favoring Joe Biden. Ballots that are blank, except for the presidential contest, were counted in batches together with a pattern appearing in at least 8 counties, including Fulton. This means Georgia did not have the votes, the legitimate votes, to justify its election results, meaning it shouldn't have been certified. 90% of the approximately 148,000 absentee ballots cast in Fulton County cannot be authenticated. Ballot images for 132,284 mail-in votes have no SHA file. Apparently, that's a digital tracking system of some kind, which is created automatically when a ballot is scanned and used to authenticate the digital image of the vote. Lacking evidence they were scanned and tabulated properly, or even cast by a real voter. Are we having fun so far? None of the 315,000 votes cast during early voting in Fulton County were witnessed to and signed by the poll manager and 2 poll workers as required by state election rules. Not only that, as they tabulated these, the numbers were impossibly skewed in Biden's favor. For example, President Trump received only 0.9%, less than 1% of the vote, 2.4% of the vote, or 3.7% from some of the tabulators, as if he was a third-party candidate in a third-world country. The odds on Trump getting less than 1% of a vote anywhere are almost incalculable. Additionally, 235,000 absentee ballots were requested and accepted too early prior to the lawful date, 180 days before the 2020 election, which was May 6, 2020. That would have been the earliest they could have received those. These votes should never have been counted in the 2020 election. Furthermore, I'm not going to go through all 6 states. I'm just highlighting a couple of points here. Furthermore, thousands of pristine, unfolded absentee ballots were counted during the hand count audit in Fulton County, according to at least 6 witnesses, which is a subject still of ongoing litigation. These absentee ballots had no folds and went 98% to Joe Biden. And they had been added in a fraudulent manner, according to witnesses. So you've got mail-in ballots that never demonstrate any evidence of being mailed in. There was no fold to put them in an envelope. And Biden got 98% of them. How does that work? Okay. Are we there yet? I'm going to just do one more. I'll do Michigan, and then I'll wrap this up. But I want to ask everybody, I don't care if you like Trump or don't like him, start thinking, if they can steal it from him, they can steal it from your candidate as well. And this is a rigged system, and it's time to really call it out. We're in Michigan now, which Biden won by an alleged 154,188 votes. As of December 2023, which would have been just last month, Michigan has 271,566 more votes than the number of voters listed in its qualified voter file for November 3rd, 2020. More than 1.5 times the election market. So to this day, there's way more votes in the system than there were voters. Okay. Officials in Detroit illegally blocked Republican poll challengers' access to the counts, covered the windows, called the police, and denied lawful challenges in order to count ballots in secret. That's been demonstrated, and I'd seen news reports on that even during the time. Affidavits and video evidence revealed thousands of ballots were delivered through a back door to the counting center in Detroit at 3:30 in the morning on election night. Here's one more little item. An estimated 289,866 absentee ballots were identified and sent to people who never requested them, something that would be illegal. Okay, so we only did a couple states. There's lots more. This entire report is on my website if anybody wants to read it. But Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and I'm trying to remember the other state right now. But these states were all handily going towards Trump when the polls closed. And then we have all these shenanigans going on, and at the end of the day, Biden wins every one of them. That's not possible. It's not rational, and it didn't happen. I'm challenging anybody watching this video to challenge your own status quo. One of the problems I have with most of the people that disagree with me politically, because I'm a conservative and I'm a Christian, but I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I think the system is broken. I don't think we have two representative political parties. I think we have a captured political system. But one of the problems I have with the people who take opposing views from me is they tend to call names and react emotionally and never really engage in a rational discussion on it. And this is going to insult some people. And I'm not the only one that is looking at it this way. I have conservative friends and people, and most of these people think for themselves. I didn't start out even supporting Trump. But at some point, I challenged myself and started looking at facts and evidence, and my worldview and my thinking changes on this. The problem I have with a lot of the people that disagree with me is they react emotionally. They'll start calling people names, conspiracy theorists, Trump's this, Trump's that. And then they go in a corner and pout somewhere, and you can't really engage in a decent, rational discussion. Why do you believe what you do? What's your evidence? How do you support this? I would hope that as I do videos, I would challenge people to prove me wrong. Because I equate, well, I'm not going to say that. I had an analogy in mind, but I won't use it. It's time to wake up. We're being enslaved. We may not even get to a 2024 election. And I don't care if you vote for Trump or not, but please wake up, look in the mirror and say, what if I'm wrong? And then start doing your homework. We need to fix this system, and we're not going to fix it when we're all propagandized and channeled into a little worldview that's being managed by people that want to control our lives or kill us. Right now, we're on the verge of yet another war, this one in the Middle East. That's what these people do, these globalists. They start wars, they make money off them, they keep countries divided, and we're trying to trigger a war now in the Middle East. And we tried in Ukraine. Putin didn't bite, so now they're moving on. I went back to the Spanish-American War, and every war since then, in my judgment, and I think I can support this, has followed the same pattern. You decide who you want to go to war with, paint that country or entity as an evil enemy that has to be dealt with. Then you stage a trigger event, like 9/11, by the way, to demonstrate how evil they are and get public support behind you. And then you go to war, send our best young people into harm's way, kill a bunch of civilians, and a few people at the top make an awful lot of money and gain more power and control. That's what's going on right now in the Middle East. We have no interest security interest over there in supporting Israel. First of all, we're not in a defense treaty with them. And by the way, our Constitution requires that if we're going to war, there has to be a declaration of war from our Congress, which authorizes our president to use military force. I don't think that's happened. I'm asking everybody that may trip over this video to please wake up. If you consider yourself a conservative, a liberal, a Republican, a Democrat, a Trump supporter, a Trump hater, forget all that. Those are labels that people are using to cook up division. Just use your brain and challenge yourself in terms of what you believe and why you believe it. And if you want to challenge anything I've said, go ahead and prove me wrong. I would like to be proved wrong. I wish this wasn't the world we're living in, but it is. So thank you for watching this video, and good luck.